High above the restless towns and crowded lives, there lived a man people barely remembered by name anymore. A mountain man whose beard was touched with silver and whose eyes carried the weight of years spent alone. Not because he hated people, but because life had slowly taught him that loss hurt more than loneliness ever could. He had once been young, once dreamed of love and laughter filling a small wooden home. But time had chipped those dreams away, first with the death of his parents, then the betrayal of a woman who promised forever and left without looking back. So he climbed higher, built a cabin where the wind spoke more than humans, where mornings began with silence and nights ended with stars. When villagers asked why he never married, he always answered calmly, "I'm too old for marriage now." It wasn't bitterness in his voice, it was surrender. Years passed. Seasons changed. Snow covered the mountain and melted again. But his heart stayed frozen in one place, convinced that love had already passed him by. He believed some stories were meant to end early, quietly, without applause. And yet, dear viewer, if you've ever felt that way, like life has already written your final chapter, stay with this story. And if stories like this touch your heart, remember to subscribe, because some endings arrive exactly when we stop expecting them. She came to the mountain on a morning wrapped in fog, her footsteps unsure but determined, carrying nothing except a small bag and a lifetime of memories. Years ago, when she was younger and the world still felt kind, she had lived in the village below, watching the quiet man who never spoke much but always listened, the man who fixed broken roofs without being asked and walked children home when storms came early. She had loved him silently, patiently, knowing timing was cruel and life unpredictable. But when she finally gathered the courage to speak, fate intervened. She was forced to leave the village to care for a dying relative, and by the time she returned years later, he was already gone, swallowed by the mountain. Most people would have let that story fade, but she didn't. She lived her life, aged, gathered regrets and strength in equal measure, but never married, never stopped wondering if he had chosen solitude or if solitude had chosen him. Now, standing before his cabin, her heart raced not with romance, but with fear that she was too late, that the man she came for had already disappeared into silence forever. She knocked once, no answer. She knocked again, whispering his name like a prayer. And when the door finally opened, and he saw her standing there, older, softer, real, time seemed to bend. If moments like this make you believe in destiny, subscribing to this channel means you'll never miss stories that remind us love doesn't follow a clock. They sat across from each other in the small cabin, fire crackling between them, years of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. He avoided her eyes at first, afraid that one look might undo the carefully built walls around his heart. She spoke gently, asking about his life, his days, his solitude, while he answered with short, safe sentences. Finally, she asked the question that had traveled all the way up the mountain with her, why he never married. He exhaled slowly and said the words he had repeated for years. "I'm too old for marriage." He explained that life had taken too much, that starting over felt foolish, that love was a young man's game. She listened without interrupting, without arguing, because she understood something he didn't. This wasn't fear of marriage. It was fear of hope. When she stood to leave, he felt relief mixed with an ache he couldn't explain, certain that this was how the story would end too. But just before stepping outside, she turned back, her voice barely louder than the wind, and said words that cracked something deep inside him. "I didn't come to ask you to change," she whispered. "I came because I've waited for you." If your heart skipped at that line, you're not alone, and subscribing helps. You stay connected to stories that linger long after the video ends. Her words didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't demand anything from him, and that was exactly why they hit so hard. She didn't say she needed him, didn't promise happiness or easy days ahead. She simply stated a truth she had carried for decades. He felt years collapse into a single moment as memories rushed back. The way she used to smile, the warmth he had once felt but buried under caution. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't silent, a morning where someone else shared the fire, an evening where words mattered again. He realized that age had never been the real excuse. Fear had been. Fear of loss, fear of starting again, fear of believing that someone could wait without resentment. He looked at her, truly looked, and understood that love hadn't passed him by. It had simply been patient. Tears came uninvited as he asked a question he never thought he'd ask. Would you still choose this life? Even now? She smiled, not like a young girl, but like a woman who had lived. endured, and chosen anyway. "I already have," she replied. If stories of second chances move you, subscribing is a small way to support more stories that speak to the quiet parts of the soul. The mountain didn't change overnight, but the cabin did. Laughter found its way into the walls. Conversations replaced silence. And the man who once believed he was finished with love learned that some chapters begin later and burn brighter. Because of it, they didn't rush, didn't pretend youth returned, didn't promise forever in grand speeches. Instead, they chose each day deliberately, proving that marriage wasn't about age, but about courage. Villagers eventually noticed the light in the cabin at night, the smoke rising from shared meals, the quiet joy of two people who found each other when they were brave, enough to stop running. And the mountain, once a place of escape, became a place of belonging. The story spread not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. Love doesn't expire, and waiting isn't wasted if it leads you home. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to begin again, then subscribing to this channel means you'll continue to hear stories that restore faith, one chapter at a time.